Now, on a federal level, the Federal Bureau of Investigation is considering anyone who uses Bank of America card to purchase anything specifically. Now, keep in mind, the top of the list is just firearm. There are many more other things that are kept quiet here, but the top of the list is just firearm. So long as you use the Bank of America card to purchase certain things that is yet to be disclosed, the only one disclosed is firearm, you are considered a criminal. And there is an ongoing investigation about you, and you are on the list. That's from the horse's mouth.
And here's a further affirmation of that. Congress of the United States, House of Representatives, Committee on the Judiciary. This is the formal memorandum released under the Congress of the United States regarding this same issue this year, May 25th, 2023. Addressed to Brian Moynihan, Chief Executive Officer, Bank of America Corporation. I'll be uploading this file on the Patreon page, along with the other parts that goes with this video and the specific part dealing with IRS and the Supreme Court ruling as of recent, because all these are correlated. And within it, they reference transcribed interviews of the things we're speaking of here. These interviews were transcribed, and here's a transcript of it that I'm referring to, or that was referred to by that congressional memorandum. Transcript was preserved by the interim staff report of Committee on the Judiciary and the Select Subcommittee of the Weaponization of the Federal Government by the U.S. House of Representatives on May 18, 2023. So this is all congressional level things, and this is the transcript. And YouTube has no medium to upload files. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to upload these transcripts that they preserved, the question and answers, where the whistleblower basically gave out all the things, question and answer. They asked him, he responded, and then there were other people and other things involved, etc., etc. It's a lot of question and answer that raises a lot of very important things. When you begin to read this, it raises an eyebrow. It's an 80-page document. So I'll be uploading this and the congressional memorandum along with the video relating to IRS and the Supreme Court ruling. All these will be on Patreon page. Then they reference other important things when it comes to 12 USC and the duty of banks, where it says, let me zoom this in, where it says, no financial institution or officers, employees, or agents of a financial institution may provide to any government authority access to or copies of or the information contained in the financial record of any customer except in accordance with the provision of this chapter. So there are exceptions to circumstances whereby any agents, employees can disclose any copies of information as access to others. Remember, we spoke about the third-party doctrine. Technically, it's their information now, but nonetheless, it's still relating to you. And since it's still relating to you, the constitutional principles remain. Not here to pick sides and say one thing is bad or good, but more so to let you see the dynamics of the importance of things and where your awareness of this comes. Because if you're not aware of it, it will keep on going on, and that which rightfully belongs to you will be waived, mirrored by your lack of provocation of said right. So even within 12 USC, it lets you know no such information can be given out, independent of third-party doctrine, because these USC codes, the statute still has to be constitutional, and then they give exceptions. In this video, we're not going to be speaking about that. But nonetheless, this memorandum released by the Congress of the United States, there's many more other things in quotes and other details during the dates, etc. And it's signed by the chairman, Jim Jordan. It's signed by another chairman, Thomas Massey, Subcommittee on the Administrative State Regulatory Reform and Antitrust, so and so. And it's also carbon copies are sent to other members of the oversight. So I'll be uploading this on the Patreon page, and I'll be making a separate video when it comes to the Supreme Court ruling of IRS and bank accounts. Did you know that the Supreme Court has recently ruled that IRS can access certain bank accounts under certain conditions? But remember, there's only a very few degrees of separation amongst the everyday man.
Hello, beautiful people. Welcome back. Would it not be great if everyone in this world are consistently aware of how the things that they do gradually, slowly, gently, but effectively being trespassed upon? Now, whatever the response is to that question, you come to your own conclusion after this video. During January 2021, something very interesting occurred. With the Bank of America, the Internal Revenue Service, and the Federal Bureau of Investigation, where those two agencies of the United States were basically handed the data of the ones banking with Bank of America. Usually with credit reports, whenever information are sold and the credit bureaus make money from it, in order for them to not get sued and be liable, since they've had so much experience with that, what they just do is just say, hey, our data has been breached. So they put out some publication as an indirect way of saying, look, we sold your information and made money with it. And instead of you finding out, we're heading it off. No different than an investor would leverage other people's money with his, or anyone would basically purchase insurance, basically remove liability to some extent personally. Well, the same thing can be done with information, whereby it is the art of war that one deliberately proposes something that did in fact happen, but under a false light. That way, the disclosure of it is not detrimental. In fact, this principle is entertained in Taoism, the Aoism, whereby the feminine principle of submission can be used effectively during wartime, whereby you don't necessarily always have to be hard-headed and stiff. Be a little bit elastic, flow, and put the natural cycle of that which is inevitable to your benefit. In this case, when someone takes advantage of you, they let you know. Credit bureaus do it by saying, look, our data have been breached. They're telling you we've sold your information, but under the guise that we couldn't control it. Someone took it, but nonetheless, we've disclosed to you that your information is with many more people now. Well, the same thing applies with people's bank account information when it comes to the Internal Revenue Service and the Federal Bureau of Investigation specific to Bank of America. And know that everything will be shown in this video. Oftentimes, whatever is disclosed in the public, which is in light of what we're speaking here, is usually a very minute portion of reality, whereby it is used as a form of disclosure that at least we told you so. Most who do banking with Bank of America do not even realize this. Yet, in the age of technology, information exists that's being disclosed to you that certain things occurred. Bank accounts usually, with the exception of subpoena and some lawful mandate, a constitutional one, cannot be disclosed. Bank accounts are generally considered private, whereby third parties cannot view it unless you consent to it. Which brings us to this thing called the Constitution, particularly the Fourth Amendment. Persons and houses to be secured from unreasonable searches and seizures. The right of the people to be secured in their persons, houses, papers, and effects against unreasonable searches and seizures shall not be violated, and no warrants. Warrants is basically as it sounds, something that requires for an act to be performed. In this case, warrant for search and seizure. The requirement of search and seizure shall not be issued, aka, and no warrant shall issue, but upon probable cause. In a series of videos in the past where we show that probable cause is a standard of evidence, on the sliding scale of evidence, probable cause is a low standard of evidence, meaning there has to be an indicia of reliability. There has to be an indicia of reliability that the search and seizure of any given property, in this specific case a bank account, is warranted. In other words, there's a cause and a reason for it that would lead to the probability, hence probable cause, that will lead to the probability that a crime will be revealed. Only then can a search and seizure take place. And said warrants for the purpose of investigating a crime shall be supported by oath or affirmation. In other words, it will be certified based on the rule of evidence, and particularly describing the place to be searched and the person or things to be seized. As simple as these few clauses sit within this Fourth Amendment, it is extremely powerful. And the more the everyday man fails to realize its power, the easier entities that don't have certain powers and abilities starts to quietly creep up on you, the everyday man, merely simply because of your lack of awareness, the simplicity of how the world around you works. If you take notice, I use that word simplicity to let you realize that what you are is very simple. All these things we're looking at in black and white is just a mere affirmation of what rightfully belongs to you. They are affirmation of your rights. So whatever any private entity does against it is no different than someone spiritually attacking you, because what you really are is not the body. You are the essence, you are the spirit, you are the breath of life behind the physical body. When you realize how powerful these words are, in pen and paper, in ink and paper, you realize that the moment it is violated, it is as though someone is spiritually violating you. Most are unaware of this. This is almost a gray area or a blind spot in most people's perception of reality and their everyday activity. What is data mining? How it works, benefits, techniques, and examples. Investopedia, a finance-related website. Data mining is the process of searching and analyzing a large batch of raw data, meaning it is undiluted, it's not its derivative, it's not summarized, it's not something that's been altered in a way, it's raw, it's the core of it, meaning nothing is redacted, in order to identify patterns and extract useful information. This is merely a sophisticated financial, long-winded talk that basically says someone is searching and seizing information. This first sentence we just read, when it comes to what data mining is precisely these three very simple terms called searches and seizure. They're in the Fourth Amendment of the United States Constitution and uniformly in state constitutions. Within the Declaration of Rights, some states call it Bill of Rights, whereby a warrant must first exist for the purpose of finding the probability of a crime, which must be supported according to the rule of evidence, and it must be very specific. Companies use data mining software to learn more about their customers. When it comes to banks, the everyday man are known as customers. Hence, banks have these things called Know Your Customer laws, KYC laws. These KYC laws are partly embedded into the Bank Secrecy Act, and then partly embedded into 31 USC, and partly embedded into 8 USC, and partly embedded into the Patriot Act. Again, companies, aka in this case, banks, or other entities such as Internal Revenue Service and the Federal Bureau of Investigation, use data mining software to learn, aka search, more about their customers, in this case the customers of the bank, to which many data has been collected from them. The purpose of data mining, aka the search of raw data, and the extraction, aka the collection, aka the seizure of said raw data called useful information. The purpose of it is that it can help them to develop more effective marketing strategies, increase sales, and decrease cost. Data mining relies on effective data collection, warehousing, meaning retention of it, you keep it, it's in your possession, and computer processing. Keep in mind, based on a third-party doctrine, which we went over on Patreon in this video. Third-party doctrine basically tells you the moment any of your information is voluntarily handed to a party, that party now owns that information of yours, albeit its origin was you. But the moment it's been transferred to that second party, it becomes theirs. It becomes their property. No different than if you go to the gym. The gym asks you for your driver's license or some type of ID so that they could issue their own ID. Meaning they're going to create a derivative of a derivative based on information you provided. They put down your driver's license number, your first name, your last name, your date of birth, and then they copy and paste some of that information into the gym ID and keep some of those for their record. The moment you do that, you voluntarily handed that gym your private information, and now it is their property, and part of the evidence of it being their property is that gym ID that they issued that acts as a duplicate, an extension, a derivative of that first identifying information, such as your driver's license or passport that you handed them. Now, that property being theirs and all the information they've retained privately, such as your address and all that, they can now give it to third parties who say they need it for whatever purpose as it matches their line of work. In this case, with banks, based on the know your customer laws, whatever information is housed, collected, aka collection and warehousing of effective data for extraction and identification of the pattern, all that information becomes theirs. In other words, they can do what they want with it. We're about to read a few articles of a whistleblower from the Federal Bureau of Investigation that basically says Bank of America gave their customers' information to them voluntarily, without a warrant, without any mandate. The underlying and unspoken thing about that is the third-party doctrine that we spoke of in the previous video thumbnail I've just shown. That 9 out of 10 everyday men who interface with these entities are absolutely clueless of. That's why we entertained in this video how to open up a bank account a certain way that will not jeopardize the integrity of your information. That's why we show the importance of using certain things. Because for some bank accounts, even if you use that EIN, the 9-digit, as a substitute for the social security number, they're still going to ask, well, let's see your ID and let's see your social security number. At that point, what do you do? We've clarified all that. And to my surprise, some people who watched that video also, they still don't catch it. But maybe sometimes certain things are not meant for everyone, because the integrity of a certain information will keep itself from people who are not meant to know it, even if someone shows it to you in black and white and explains it to you in different videos. But nonetheless, banks and KYC laws. These KYC laws turns your information into their property. Therefore, data mining can be done by third parties based on third-party doctrine. KYC means know your customer laws. Know your client, KYC. What it means, compliance requirement. Know your client, KYC, is a standard in the investment industry that ensures advisors can verify a client's identity and know their client's investment knowledge and financial profile. In other words, a credit report. You now see why we gave the analogy of credit reporting agencies, which, by the way, many people think they are the credit bureaus. There's only one credit bureau that exists, and that is the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. We've shown that on this Instagram post. And it's in 15 USC. Equifax, Innovis, TransUnion, and all the other specific reporting agencies that keeps a dossier or file of people when it comes to specific affairs such as rental, utility, whatever it is. All those are known as credit reporting agencies. They are not the credit bureaus. But nonetheless, let's not shift too far into that end. KYC is a standard when it comes to compiling knowledge and financial profile of people considered clients or customers. Hence, we gave the analogy of when Equifax, Experian, and TransUnion or the like tells you, hey, we've had a data breach. Oops, don't sue us. It's not our fault. We got hacked. That's just their way of saying, look, we sold your information because of the third-party doctrine, which we know you don't know, but we don't want to make that very clear because it's all based on rights and obligation of contract, and it gives us less headache if we just use the basic art of war and just put you to sleep. You don't know any better anyway. You're distracted with many life's woes. But there are a few of you who know a little bit and have some time to actually stand up and speak up. So we'll just do this because we know all it takes to really break us is just a few people speaking up, not the masses themselves. So we'll just head that off in the future and currently by just saying, hey, someone took the information from us. Oops, our bad, but look, your information is not with us now. Based on the KYCs, bank keep financial knowledge and profiles, aka they keep a file on you, a profile. Three components of KYC includes the Customer's Identification Program imposed under USA Patriot Act in 2001, customers' due diligence, and ongoing monitoring or enhanced due diligence of customers' account once it is established. Based on the Customer Identification Program, customer due diligence, and enhanced due diligence under KYC requirement, they obtain your information and update it. And the moment they do so, it is their property. That's the basic premise that minimally, just minimally, the average mind to have in the forefront of their awareness as they listen to the rest of these articles that we're about to read. That way, you comprehend from the foundation that we've shown at the beginning of the video being the Constitution, the requirements of search and seizure, third-party doctrine, know your customer law, and what data mining is. Keep those basic principles in mind. That way, as you listen to this, your own awareness, your own consciousness, your own intellect, your own spiritual intelligence, emotional intelligence would assist you adjust to not necessarily being upset, but more so to realize the importance of how order is important, and that the only way disorder or chaos, which is the contrary of cosmos, which is order, the only way chaos, disorder, can ensue is when you, the one whose consent is required, you the everyday man, when you fail to realize what your power are and what the limitation of the tortfeasors are. It always starts very slow and very gentle. In the video regarding the fact that competence is not an option and how technology is being used to basically abrogate your constitutionally secured right, such as where your phone snitches on you, it was mentioned that these things are no different than slowly lubricating your butthole until someone really sticks it to you. It occurs seemingly in isolated places, small events here and there, until it becomes a norm. No different than the Social Security number was optional for people. No different than taxation was optional to fund World War I. Until it became the norm because, well, they realized, okay, we run these social experiments on people. We give them disclosure what's going on. They don't do anything about it, partly because they're not aware of what our limitations are and what their power are, and partly because they are afraid, and also partly because, well, they're just too busy being occupied with other things. Therefore, we can just make it a norm and just stuff it down their throat. And by the time the next generation come, the next generation wouldn't even know its origin. And by the time the next generation come, the next generation wouldn't even know its origin. And by the time the next generation come, the next generation wouldn't even know its origin. And by the time the next generation come, the next generation wouldn't even know its origin. That's the dangerous part. It's already bad that the current generation, as it's active, as its inception, are clueless as to what's going on, the why or how. What's worse beyond that bad is that the new generation will be clueless as to how it even occurred, why it occurred. It would just be a norm to them. That will be the light that they see every day. That will be their reality without thinking twice. No different than you, the one listening to this. You go out there every day, do your thing. No matter what social political class you are, no matter how special you think you are, no matter how good you think you are. You go out there and do things every day, interface with humans, interface with things created by humans, for humans. And amongst representatives that are to be there as mediums, and you just intrinsically feel something is not quite right. That is so because something has once occurred in the past that has become a norm that's almost like a gray area, a blind spot to you. You don't necessarily see the why and how, but you just intrinsically feel it. You intrinsically feel it because your soul and your spirit is what this thing called rights is tied to. And that Constitution we read in the beginning of this video is merely just a black and white affirmation of what you intrinsically are. And what you intrinsically are, if generation after generation it is violated, it just doesn't feel right. That is what you feel every day when you go out there. You feel the belligerence, you feel the fear, you feel the stagnation. Can't quite put your finger on it, but it's there. And it's because generation after generation, these things, an abrogation of the substance called your essence, loosely known in man-made law as rights, it's been violated and it is being violated, and the violation thereof is being slowly amplified. But as they do it, they give you disclosure and use basic art of war. And sometimes your mere awareness of the fact that it's been taking place, it is taking place, how and why, is enough to change the course of things in the air alone. If one is too afraid, busy, apprehensive, or don't comprehend all the other intricate details of taking functional actions into stopping it from occurring. If I can just bring your awareness to this, my job is perfectly done. The mere fact that the forefront of your awareness now sees and knows this is enough to make the change. Because what you and I are far beyond what we observe within the five senses. The fact that you and your spirit and soul accept that something is not right with this, the real you that makes claim and possess that body, when you say my arm, my head, my leg, my is a possessive term. Something is stating a claim to those other things such as your job, your vehicle, your house. So I say mine, that mine is you, spirit and the soul, who has the capacity to touch and alter things beyond those five senses that you're stating a claim to based on possession. And once that you, the spirit and the soul, is aware of these things, believe it or not, every time you sleep, you're going to places doing things, altering things, making change to things. So all I have to do is just tell you, the spirit and the soul, that these things are taking place. And you intrinsically know what to do after that. Even if you're not intellectually astute to the point where you can sit down and construct things on pen and paper or take physical acts as a correction. The fact that you, soul and spirit, is hearing this and is being aware of it is sufficient for changes to begin to occur. Because you are in fact that powerful. An FBI whistleblower told congressional investors, and by the way, all these articles will be linked in the description so that you can see it yourself. An FBI whistleblower told Congress so that you can see it yourself and give these people putting up these articles based on First Amendment, you can give them the appropriate credit that they deserve. An FBI whistleblower told congressional investigators that the DC field office pushed local offices to open criminal investigations into Americans based solely on financial transactions Bank of America tracked voluntarily provided to the Bureau. In other words, at the District of Columbia, they are pushing local municipalities and their police to engage criminal investigations solely, meaning only, based on financial transaction that Bank of America tracked and voluntarily, this voluntary part, remember we read in the Constitution, search and seizure require warrants, and then we mentioned third-party doctrine, which was shown in other videos on Patreon. Otherwise, you can just type into any search engine third-party doctrine. You can read it for yourself, see what it means, but it's been explained here. This voluntarily part is what I want to bring to your attention because it's based on the third-party doctrine per the Know Your Customer laws of banks. So now you have municipal police creating an investigation of crime because some banking institution voluntarily provided to the FBI your information according to testimony reviewed by the Federalist. And this is something that was revealed to the general public by an FBI whistleblower. Let's read that again. An FBI whistleblower told congressional investigators that the DC field office pushed local offices to open criminal investigations into Americans based solely on financial transactions Bank of America tracked and voluntarily provided to the Bureau, according to testimonies reviewed by the Federalist. Let's zoom this in a bit. Quote, Bank of America, with no directive from the FBI, meaning they were not prompted, as far as we know publicly, data mined its customers' base. Remember we read what data mining is? Data mining is just another fancy technological term for search and seizure. So the people who constructed this Constitution were geniuses. They were not stupid people. As much as in today's world we like to use a lot of substitute terms, these basic foundational principles for all this infinite substitute terms have been mentioned, preserved, and entertained in this same simple basic Constitution, created 200 plus years ago. Granted, 200 plus years is basically less than a blink of an eye when it comes to chronological time. But nonetheless, considering that they did not have the technological luxury available to you and I, the everyday man today, even if they did, it was more so among very few, but just generally like this, they did not. Considering that fact, their mind actually worked clearer and better. They realized that regardless of whatever extension of what human activities are, there are always core to human desires and human activity, human nature, which is for someone to take advantage of another who seemingly appears to not be able to prevent the tort from occurring. Therefore, that which cannot be stripped from us, called inalienable rights, were preserved in black and white. The question is, do you know it? And do you know how it's been violated today? Do you know how what's going on now is slowly brewing and cooking for something worse in the future? So now Bank of America provided information to other agencies voluntarily, solely based on certain types of financial transactions. Meaning, whatever you're doing is now being tracked. How you spend your monies are being tracked. Remember in this video regarding technology and artificial intelligence, we mentioned that slowly but surely, the whole digital currency thing will put bar on certain purchases, track certain purchases, track the geographical locations of the purchase, how and why and how much you can do so. The voluntary nature of certain things when it comes to how you use your monies, whether you choose to file tax or not, becomes involuntary. They take it out automatically. They prevent you from purchasing certain things because certain items will now have a SKU attached to it. And each digital bank account or each digital currency that you carry around can now have tag and flags in it to say you cannot purchase this specific types of things. What Bank of America did with these federal agencies is they are slowly beginning to initiate that, whereby they take certain nature of transactions when people purchase certain things and disclose it to federal agencies so that voluntarily, so that said federal agencies can begin a criminal investigation. Bank of America, with no directive from FBI, data mined its customers' base. Whistleblower and recently retired FBI supervisory intelligence analyst George Hill told investigators for the House Judiciary Committee, according to Hill's testimony. Now, for those with database injunction, you already see the power in it and what it does. But that's not the core of this video, so we'll not go into that. 2 separate videos have already been made on that. Hill had identified himself last month as one of the whistleblowers cooperating with congressional investigators when speaking with Just the News' John Solomon about the disclosures he made to the House Judiciary Committee during a transcribed deposition. A review of Hill's testimony confirms the details the military veteran and former longtime FBI and NSA analyst told Solomon. It also reveals more troubling details. According to the material reviewed, He'll testify that on either January 7 or 8, 2021, while everyone is distracted with putting some trash on their face, hindering their own flow of life, getting sicker, and accepting BS, all of this was taking place. Bank of America provided the FBI's DC field office with a, quote, huge list of individuals who used Bank of America credit or debit card in DC. Again, this experiment was done in the District of Columbia. And while they're just revealing a very small portion, know that Bank of America operates all over North America and in some other countries. Therefore, the fact that know your customer law and third-party doctrine merged together is an equation. It means all these other branches in all these other states can uniformly have and still do uniformly perform in this manner. So don't perceive this as an isolated event. Bank of America provided the FBI DC field office a, quote, huge list of individuals who used Bank of America credit or debit cards in DC or the surrounding Maryland and Virginia areas on January 5, 6, or 7, 2021. Bank of America then elevated to the top of the list, meaning they prioritized this list of people that they're given to these federal agencies based on what these people used their own finances, their own labor, their own equity, based on what they use these monies to purchase. They categorized the priority, meaning a list is created for people based on what you purchase. The question now is, what list do you want to be in? Meaning what you do in your everyday life, someone is categorizing your activity and giving you a credit score, giving you a societal score, giving you a societal category as to who you are, what you are, and someone is investigating you whether you realize it or not, simply based on what you're doing with your monies, based on the bank card that you're using. Bank of America then elevated to the top of the list anyone who had ever, through January 6, 2021, ever, meaning from the beginning, all the way to January 6, 2021, which, again, to isolate as though that's the end of it, but we all know better, used a Bank of America product to purchase a firearm. So now you see that the Second Amendment is now being automatically tethered to the situation. Normally speaking, Second Amendment case laws in any situations are always tethered to the preservation of persons, papers in effect, and the seizure and search thereof, aka Fourth Amendment. Second Amendment does not stand by itself. If you observe or study any issue with Second Amendment, whether the plaintiff lost or won, whether the defendant lost or won, whatever the dissent or the conclusion of any Supreme Court or appeal court cases, Second Amendment is rarely, if ever, entertained or determined to its own. It is always viewed and determined in light of Fourth Amendment security of persons, papers in effect, and the seizure and search thereof. And now this banking institution called Bank America is looking at anyone who uses their own sweat equity to purchase firearm. And if they did, they're putting them on a list, and they're handing that list to federal agencies for the purpose of investigating a crime. In other words, these people that you are trusting your sweat equity to say, hey, temporarily hold my money and use it to gamble in the stock market and enslave me with it by inflation and creating a bunch of CDOs to enslave me, my children, and everyone else. Well, take my money and use that. And then they are using that same information while they're gambling with it in the stock, bond, and commodities market. They're now using it to track you. No different than how the Social Security number is used to track you. No different than how taxation is used to track you. They're now using it to track you. And then they're going further by adding you based on what you've given to them, which rightfully belongs to you. But based on third-party doctrine, they're taking that information, they're looking at what you're doing with it, and then they're categorizing you as a threat to society and then giving it to a federal agency to turn you into a criminal. Bank of America then elevated to the top of the list anyone who had ever, through January 6, 2021, used a Bank of America product to purchase a firearm. There was no geographic or date range limit. There was no geographic or date range limit to the search for firearm purchases. Hill stressed, remember Hill, George Hill, FBI investigator. He stressed, meaning he asserted and highlighted, meaning the individual will be flagged at the top of the list had he, quote, purchased a shotgun in 1999 in Iowa, meaning regardless of whether you are in one state or the other, regardless of timeline, if you used anything relating to Bank of America to do anything that's constitutionally secure, someone is putting you on the list and has determined you to be a criminal. And used a Bank of America credit card to check out of hotel on January 5, 2021, in the Northern Virginia area, following a trip that could be completely unrelated to the Capitol riot in January 6. Whether or not this Capitol riot was a staged BS for the purpose of further controlling people and enslaving people is not what we're saying here. We're just saying they're corroborating things one way or the other to make the everyday man and their rightful capacity to be left alone and just go mind their business. They're corroborating it to make them criminals. The question is, are you aware of this? Are you aware of the intricacies interrelated to it? You should be. The DC field office, which oversaw the January 6th investigation, distributed the Bank of America list internally to field offices throughout the country. Now the information is reaching far and wide among a database of people. Another video will be done on Patreon when it comes to this and the importance of actually finding out your information that's held with these federal agencies. Very important. Anyway, Hill testified in his deposition. Hill further explained that his supervisor at the Boston field office refused to open an investigation on the individuals flagged on the list because there was, quote, no predication, quote, there's no crime that was committed by using a product, which is the Bank of America card, in the district or around the district, unquote. Hill testified, explaining his supervisor's reasoning for why no, quote, further action was required. But the DC field office pushed back, according to Hill. The DC field office told Boston Supervisor Special Agent, or SSA, he needed to open up the case, meaning he needed to open up an investigation of a crime. When the local office's SSA refused, the DC field office threatened to call the Assistant Special Agent in Charge, or ASAC, of the local office. Hill told the Congressional Committee. The SSA stood firm in his refusal, and did the local ASAC, Hill said. Even though the DC field office then threatened the ASAC that it would escalate the matter to the Office of Special Agent in Charge, or SAC. The DC field office then pushed the Office of SAC to open investigation into the targeted Americans. Now on a federal level, the Federal Bureau of Investigation is considering anyone who uses Bank of America card to purchase anything specifically. Now keep in mind, the top of the list is just firearm. There are many more other things that are kept quiet here. But the top of the list is just firearm. So long as you use the Bank of America card to purchase certain things that is yet to be disclosed, the only one disclosed is firearm, you are considered a criminal. And there is an ongoing investigation about you, and you are on the list. That's from the horse's mouth.
And here's a further affirmation of that. Congress of the United States, House of Representatives, Committee on the Judiciary. This is the formal memorandum released under the Congress of the United States regarding this same issue this year, May 25th, 2023, addressed to Brian Moynihan, Chief Executive Officer, Bank of America Corporation. I'll be uploading this file on the Patreon page, along with the other parts that goes with this video and the specific part dealing with IRS and the Supreme Court ruling as of recent, because all these are correlated. And within it, they reference transcribed interviews of the things we're speaking of here. These interviews were transcribed, and here is a transcript of it that I'm referring to, or that was referred to by that congressional memorandum. Transcript was preserved by the interim staff report of Committee on the Judiciary and the Select Subcommittee of the Weaponization of the Federal Government by the U.S. House of Representatives on May 18, 2023. So this is all congressional level things. And this is the transcript. And YouTube has no medium to upload files. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to upload these transcripts that they preserved, the question and answers, where the whistleblower basically gave out all the things, question and answer. They asked him, he responded, and then there were other people and other things involved, etc., etc. It's a lot of question and answer that raises a lot of very important things. When you begin to read this, it raises an eyebrow. It's an 80-page document. So I'll be uploading this and the congressional memorandum along with the video relating to IRS and the Supreme Court ruling. All these will be on page. Then they reference other important things when it comes to 12 USC and the duty of banks, where it says, let me zoom this in. Where it says, no financial institution or officers, employees, or agents of a financial institution may provide to any government authority access to or copies of or the information contained in the financial record of any customer except in accordance with the provision of this chapter. So there are exceptions to circumstances whereby any agents, employees can disclose any copies of information as access to others. Remember, we spoke about the third-party doctrine. Technically, it's their information now, but nonetheless, it's still relating to you. And since it's still relating to you, the constitutional principles remain. Not here to pick sides and say one thing is bad or good, but more so to let you see the dynamics of the importance of things and where your awareness of this comes, because if you're not aware of it, it will keep on going on, and that which rightfully belongs to you will be waived, mirrored by your lack of provocation of said right. So even within 12 USC, it lets you know no such information can be given out, independent of third-party doctrine, because these USC codes, the statute still has to be constitutional, and then they give exceptions. In this video, we're not going to be speaking about that. But nonetheless, this memorandum released by the Congress of the United States, there's many more other things in quotes and other details during the dates, etc. And it's signed by the chairman, Jim Jordan. It's signed by another chairman, Thomas Massey, subcommittee in the Administrative State Regulatory Reform and Antitrust, so and so. And it's also carbon copies are sent to other members of the oversight. So I'll be uploading this on the Patreon page, and I'll be making a separate video when it comes to the Supreme Court ruling of IRS and bank accounts. Did you know that the Supreme Court has recently ruled that IRS can access certain bank accounts under certain conditions? Remember, there's only a very few degrees of separation amongst the everyday man. On YouTube, we'll just leave this here. But moving on.
That's on the congressional record. But to the SAC's credit, he refused. Hill noted, saying Boston SAC countered, quote, no, we're not going to open up cases based on credit card or debit card activity that took place. Meaning, he refused to participate in it. While Boston's FBI office refused to open the requested case, Hill stressed that, quote, what I don't know and could not give accurate testimony to was whether the DC field office, quote, took it upon themselves to open cases, meaning he refused to participate in it. But considering the fact that any given body politic or entity has a lot of employees, where one man has good faith and a certain level of conscience, another party, on the other hand, it's the complete opposite. Hill's deposition testimony raises another troubling possibility. That one or more of the other 54 local FBI field offices either complied with the DC field office's initial request to open an investigation into innocent Americans, or later capitulated when the DC offices escalated the request up the chain of command to the ASAC and then the SAC. Now, all this is without constitutional warrant. The only reason the Boston FBI office did not launch investigation, meaning there are many different offices, the Boston FBI office was where George Hill worked, and he refused. But then there are other people within that same offices and many more other FBI offices that are located in 54 different places that reasonably basically did the opposite of what he did, meaning they didn't refuse and they did in fact open an investigation of a crime. Why? Just because someone used their Bank of America credit card to purchase something. But the one that we know out of those somethings, that's on the list of those some things, is firearm. What all those other some things are could be anything. And the reason why they omitted it is because it would be a little bit more harsh and more of an alarm in people's mind if they knew that bag they bought at the store or that snack they bought at the corner store using their Bank of America card qualified them to be a criminal, and they are being investigated and they're on the list. Therefore, they just omitted that and prioritized the typical mundane stuff people are already aware of and already afraid of, which is firearm, albeit firearm is constitutionally secure, so long as you're not a menace to society and your intent is in good faith. Part of that includes protecting yourself, your family, your properties, and effect. The only reason the Boston FBI office did not launch investigation into Bank of America's leadership stood firm against depression. Now there are 54 more locations now. The Boston office is just the 55th one. There are other 54 local FBI field offices that is not disclosed as to what they did. Remember, George Hill is just the one in the Boston field office, and he can only speak as to his experience there. And the only reason we know about the DC field office's attempt to target innocent Americans, based on Bank of America's data mining, gun owners who happen to be in the greater DC area in January 5, 6, or 7, 2021, is that a whistleblower came forward. Otherwise, all these will be occurring without your knowledge. What the FBI Others 54 field office did in response to the DC field office's pressure is unknown. According to a person familiar with Hill's testimony, Hill had no information in the question either. Also unknown is whether any other private businesses mined the financial information of their customers, as Bank of America had, and then handed that private information over to the feds. And there are many more private organizations outside of any federal agencies that hold your information as to what you're doing with your own sweat equity, based on your trust that you put in a banking institution. Congressional investigations and more whistleblowers will be needed to uncover the extent of the FBI's political targeting of innocent Americans. Bank of America did not respond to the Federalist request for comment. You're American, aren't you? You're in the land of the free, aren't you? What do they say? America, the land of the free, home of the slaves or the brave? Is that what it is? Right. The general public is slowly being turned into slave race. The human race is being turned into a slave race, slowly, methodically. You have to be aware of this. What you do with the information that's publicly readily available is up to you. Use your own discernment. Enough of mind control. If one party has to tell you, hey, it's all right, remain dumb. And then another party has to tell you, hey, no, it's not all right, don't remain dumb. Regardless of what either party tells you, someone is still controlling your mind. I'm not here to be your friend. I'm not here to give you hope. I'm not here to tell you be dumb or be smart. I'm here to present information to you that you otherwise might not have been privy to. And then you use your mind. You use your discernment. Up to you. But at least you cannot say if someone is not telling you these things. You now hear from the horse's mouth. This is the man called George Hill that we just read an article relating to, as to his experience that's depicted in that article. That way it's not just someone reading some black and white feeding you some trash. You listen to him, the man with a first-hand experience that stood before the congressional committee and provided testimony on what's being done with your information by a banking institution, consequently turning you into a criminal unconstitutionally.
The lead was telling us to open up at least a preliminary investigation, a PI, into those 7 individuals based on the data mining that Bank of America did to generate that list. So that Bank of America set a date range of 5 to 7 January, and then anyone who used a BOA, a Bank of America product, whether that be a debit card or a credit card, inside or immediately surrounding the district, or who bought a plane ticket to go to the district prior to January 6th and left after January 6th. That was the original poll. And then they went and data mined it further, and anyone on that list who had purchased a firearm would move to the top of the list for more closer scrutiny. And to their credit, I said it in front of committee. I'll say it here. I'll call balls and strikes. Give credit where credit is due. To their credit, to the supervisor's credit, to his chain of command, all the way up to the SAC, responded that there's no evidence of a crime being committed here. We cannot open up preliminary investigations on someone for using a financial instrument in the district. And so they pushed back, and Boston did not take any action on those names. What I cannot comment on, because I don't know, is if Washington field office took any actions on those names.
Knowing what your rights are is not just merely knowing that the black and white exists and that you can utter and reiterate it. Knowing what your rights are constitutes your awareness of what someone else is doing contrary to it. The how and why of your essence being screwed over, all simply because you put full faith in institutions. And that is fine. But if you don't know what your powers are, you will not be able to prevent, limit, or stop these institutions from stepping outside of their bounds. Because it would just be the Kool-Aid of okie doke. You just keep drinking the Kool-Aid. It's alright. You just gotta do this just to get by. No different than asking people, hey, how are you? They just say, I'm just alright. I'm getting by. There's another day. Or when you're departing with people and they give you this bullshit when they tell you, oh, be safe, stay safe out there. That's someone cursing you using words, because the presumption is that you are weak and that you are a victim in society. Therefore, they're telling you, make sure you stay in the shell, okay? Stay dumb, stay stupid, stay slow, stay safe. Think for yourself and be aware of how the world around you is currently moving, and see into the future. Consequently, act now based on your level of awareness. Up to you, though, at the end of the day. But again, the least you cannot say is someone is not telling you. What you do now is affecting everyone else far from you. What you do now is affecting the future of your children, to which this world, now, you are borrowing against their future. Remember, the future is like sailing and rowing a boat. You row by facing the opposite of where you're going. You don't necessarily see where you're going. The only thing you can see is where you've just left and where you currently are. But as you row, you're constantly moving forward into the future. The direction this one controlling this canoe is facing is the opposite direction of where he's going. But in order to get where he's going, he has to row it. The only place that he can see is the past of where he's leaving. Now imagine someone sitting right in front of him, facing the opposite direction he's facing, and they're pointing behind him saying, you're about to hit a rock. Row a little bit towards the left to avoid it, because you can't see it. That's precisely what this video is. That's precisely what the words in this video is telling you. If you hit that rock, and then you go into this large body of water, you might know how to swim, because you trust in your survival skills and your instinct. But you may be far away from shore, and the waters that you're navigating in might be filled with a lot of predatory sea creatures. So it's best that you pay attention. Until next time, take care. Really, best of luck. I have a Patreon page, and I'm inviting you to come join. For you interested in discharge, we show everything about how it's done, and my own experience. Consistent posts are made explaining many things regarding said discharge. Many will seek and simply wouldn't find. Those dealing with mortgage issue or want to know more about it, we speak of it. For those dealing with basic stuff like traffic issues, we speak about the solution, and I show it from my own experiences and how I permanently prevent any such issues. Those worrying about trust, different types of trust, we go over so many things consistently regarding trust. We show the IRS manuals. Those who are interested in suing and making money through debt collection or other means, we go over it. We show it. I show my own settlement checks and the things that I've done as a personal experience. Those interested in banking, we show subtle details and intricacies of the things that I have learned. For those interested in other things like the IRS forms and how to put it to use, we show it, explain the details. For those interested in court-related matters and intricacies, we always show it. For those interested in the spiritual aspect of things and how it works, we show and explain it. Those with child support matters, we explain and we show everything in detail also. Great puzzle pieces that can never be found in other social media platforms, but we explain it all as it relates to many different things. For those interested in express trusts and the issue of how not qualifying for taxation, which I call dinking, how it relates to any other type of trust or any other affairs, and how you can intertwine your affairs into the different types of discharge that exist and lack of qualification for taxation. Speak about it. The truth about really recusing attorneys and the whole foreign agent registration and attorney lawyer number, we speak about it. We speak about how to really bring about juries, and some of the comment section asks good questions and greater answers are given. Speak about how to get and use tax exemptions for vehicle use and sales. You don't have to belong to some organization. You can actually get yours according to the language of the legislature within your state. Go over the details that a lot of people mentor about regarding Article 1, Article 3. What really makes a court? It's not limited to just your paperwork. Most people don't know. We go over business matters for those with actual businesses, S Corp, C Corp, LLCs, those who are business minded and those who make monies. Go over other things that a lot of people don't know functions internationally. We speak about a lot of other spiritual related matters. Details on how to bring criminal charges, what it truly means to bring criminal charges, what a bill of particulars is, how to recuse a judge, details of the parliamentary rules in court and legislature, different things about standard of evidence and burden of proof, different things that a lot of people will speak of. Discovery. But did you know there are 6 types of discoveries? You know how to intertwine your LLCs and S Corps with an express trust, how to not make them taxable. Do you know when Trinity versus Pagliaro really is involved? Do you know how to use your home as a home office? And the many details involved. Go over the injunction and how to enforce the different types of injunctions that exist. The intricacies of how data brokers exist and how they steal information. Not just the credit bureaus, but many data brokers and how you can prevent them. We go over grants, getting grants. We go over issues and solutions of CPN and how they're created. There are about 6 or 4 to 5 different parts that were created. We go over caveats where people say sue them, but they don't really know. We go over the things to do after you sue them. We go over the issues of privacy and technology. All the whole thing about perfection of security interest, UCC, and how to use it and how to monetize the birth certificate, all that. We go over the details. There are a lot of principles and doctrines people don't know about that we go over. Go over how to really do the copyright and the details involved in it. Go over how to simply do a trademark. It's far more easier than you think. All these people telling you go to a trademark office, do this, write this letter. It's not that difficult. Go over how to fill out the GSA bond box at a time, and so many more. How to get settlement checks, how to put your vehicle in a trust. I show you from my own experiences, form for form, step by step. Go over the different types of relief to be granted. The type of relief you seek invokes the type of jurisdiction that you fall under. All these people speaking about chancery, equity, and law, common law. The relief that you seek is directly tied to the type of jurisdiction. Go over the CPN, how it's created. Go over how to obtain bonds, where to do it, Go over the different types of discharge and some more. We explain each of those types of discharge. We explain how trademark and copyright is affiliated with asset protection. We go over how to prove trust. We go over the different types of fraud. We go over the importance that many people will never know. So many more. I show my own experiences in the audio calls from court cases of how I get different types of settlement checks. Go over the different types of discharge. There's so much more that it can't even completely be spoken of here regarding trust. We go over how to create it step by step and many more things that will never be shown on YouTube or any other platforms. Go over other principles that people don't know about. When they speak about statute of limitation, well, fraud does have a statute of limitation, but do you know how to subvert it? As to why that phrase fraud has no statute of limitation to bring it to life, most people don't know. There's so many things that we speak about. We speak about how to garnish people's checks and people's property. There's a form that you use for that. People don't know about it. Speak about details regarding foreign trustees. Speak about spiritual related matters. And on the Instagram page, if you get to join, come on over. There's also a Facebook page where questions and answers are posted and other reminder links to certain videos are shown. Until next time, take care. Best of luck.